Can you hear my?
All right. Yeah, I can hear you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Episode 12 with Dana Georgiou, which Dana, I completely forgot. Did I get that right?
You
I've never
totally did. And you're one of the first because people like to French it up or do weird things to it. And
no.
it's just Giorgio, man. Just
It's just a
Giorgio.
girl from Texas. Keep it
Just a girl
simple.
from Texas. That's it.
All right. For those of you who don't know Dana, with nearly 30 years in mortgage and lending, Dana has held executive roles spanning sales, marketing, operations, credit, compliance, and compliance in both top tier and growing lenders. In 2023, she founded Lending Luminary, a boutique consulting firm where she offers fractional executive leadership, sales and marketing strategy, operational review, and most importantly, AI powered growth for mortgage pros and small to mid sized lenders. Dana is also the best selling author and passionate advocate of financial literacy. She serves on the Athena Council, champions teen financial education, and is an active thought leader with the mortgage community. Off the clock, Dana and her husband Sean run a small ranch in East Texas, raising registered Texas Longhorn cattle, goats, chickens, pigs, and their Labradors, bringing humanity and grit from the barn to the boardroom. Okay, so was all of that true? For everybody, if you've never watched the show, ChatGPT writes it. So, what?
Yeah. I mean,
Right?
remarkably all true. Yeah.
Okay, hold on. The part
Yeah.
that I
They
can't
got
believe,
it's one.
I don't believe one part. It said small ranch in East Texas. What is small in East Texas? Is it like, oh, it's only 30 acres? How?
It's only 100 acres.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, fun story about that. Our homestead is, what we kind of, call the area like, right here where we live, and that's 25 acres. But we participate with others on 8,000 acres about 15 minutes down the road. So yeah, I mean, we self-sustain here on our ranch. So, pretty much everything we eat, we grow or we raise in some capacity, which is kind of cool. It's taken us a few years to get there. But yeah, the homestead is 25 acres.
Okay,
Nice.
that is small for all
Yeah.
intents and purposes.
Yeah.
How
In
many-
Texas, dude, that's small.
tiny.
Like that's
Yeah.
teeny tiny in
That's
Texas.
like a suburban home, basically. No,
Yeah.
What are
How
you
many
growing
cows?
on there? Is it, I was going to say cattle or
according to ChatGPT, you have cattle, goats, chickens,
Yeah.
pigs, and Labradors. All those are true.
Yeah, I have all of that and donkeys. I have two donkeys that we adopted from Wyoming because they're amazing pack animals to protect, right? I think that's about
Does your husband do
Yeah,
that full
for the most
time, or do
other
both
than
of
my
you work
husband.
full-time jobs and then run a ranch?
Yeah, we're
Jesus.
ambitious around here, man. We both work full-time jobs. He's a real estate agent and owns a construction company. So yeah, he's going all the time. And on any given weekend or evening before it gets dark, one of us is on a tractor, a
Wow.
mower, like doing
the stuff.
something.
Right there, you go. That is Dana's hobby, clearly, because there's no time for anything else. So, we always joke about this. Nobody as a little kid is like, when I grow up, I want to be in the mortgage business. So what brought you to this lovely industry?
Yeah, that was not what my thought process was. I actually thought that I was going to be a history professor, honestly, and like maybe even a Texas state senator. The mortgage business, like most of us in the mortgage business, happens so accidentally, right? I needed a job. My old softball coach, growing up, had this little boutique lender shop. He's like, hey, come for the summer, you can make a couple of bucks. And then I never went back. Like it just, he started teaching every aspect of it, processing, underwriting, residential, commercial. And, it was the catalyst And then, once you start making money, you're like, okay.
It's true. The
Yeah.
next thing you know, you wake up and you're in your 40s and you're like, all right, I guess this is what I'm doing.
So we have your softball coach.
Or some of us wake up and we're in our late 50s and we're kind of like, yeah. So, yeah. That too. 40s, 50s, whatever.
Macy, we're gonna say something.
We have your softball coach to thank for Ted Cruz.
Yeah, he was kind of my Ted Lasso, honestly.
We could have had Dana Georgiou.
Yeah.
Wait,
He would love that, by the way. I'm gonna have to ping him. He would absolutely love that correlation.
There's still time, Dana. Come on.
Yeah, there's still
Second
time,
career. Dana for
there.
Senate. All right, if we have anybody watching who would like to financially back that, just let us know in the comments.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm in. I'm down. Listen, advocacy is advocacy, right? And so, whether it's in a political format or in the way that I do it now for our industry, I'm all in. And quite frankly, I think everybody in the mortgage business should be. And so whether that's from, making posts on LinkedIn or advocating with our associations and all of the different ones, if we're not engaged in advancing our industry, why should we expect that any legislation would?
No,
That's just
totally
my
agree
personal
with you.
Point.
We have this ability to believe that politicians understand all of these industries and know what's best, and the reality is they don't. But people from this industry. Before we're going to jump into AI and specifically around kind of small, mid-sized lenders. But before we get to that, there's two things I'd love to touch on. And the first is Athena's counsel. So I know you're a part of that. And so there may be people who are watching this who aren't even aware of what Athena's counsel. There you go, Chris Mace and PK. Damn, I'm the only one on this show who's seen Molly Dowd. I see her posts every now and again. So that's why I know about it. Do you mind telling? Oh, we lost her. Well, there you go. And now she's back. Hang on. Okay, I don't know what happened. You vanished.
I think her connection might be a little.
Maybe. Now we've got her frozen.
Well, did she make a twin comment when she joined?
I guess sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a little bit of a freeze up here. We'll see what happens.
Just so you're aware, Andrew, when she joins, the wonderful Jake Vermillion's last question was, since she's all about financial literacy.
I saw that.
Okay.
I got it. That's good. Yeah, you're spot on. I'm impressed. Did you pull that from memory?
No, I muted myself and went and watched the interview and skipped to where it was.
Okay, I think
I tried doing that, but it didn't work.
Yeah, I feel bad. I apologize. It's
good.
on my list. So I spent all weekend at a wrestling tournament in Sandusky, Ohio. I did not realize how big these things are. There was 62 wrestling mats. 62. It's just insane. There you are.
All right. So crazy story in the Southeast, in Texas right now, we've been getting these wild storms. I literally just had the biggest lightning strike I've ever seen in my life, out my office window. And it just zapped everything.
Oh my gosh. This is the second time this has happened. Only what did
12 episodes. 1 out of 6 episodes, you're guaranteed to have a natural. Steve
lost power.
Lost his power in his home while we were doing the show a couple of weeks ago. So there you go.
This thing is electrifying. Oh,
that's
God.
crazy. So I've joined on my
electrifying.
phone, so hopefully it'll be okay. But yeah, we'll see how it goes, I guess.
We're hearing you great.
All right. So going back around. So if you could tell the audience and Mace and PK, who apparently don't know anything about it, just about Athena's counsel and sort of what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
We lost your picture.
She's there.
Oh, there you are.
Here I am. Okay. Athena's Council is this organization started by Molly Dowdy, who created some of the first women's conference like a decade ago, called Next. And she put together this council of financial services women in every category that you can possibly think of. So it's a place that, we regularly come together, collaborate, share. Like I have just, in my career, and like, this is nothing to, no offense to you dudes, right? Because, I love you, but there's only been so many seats at the table, right? And I just never wanted to compete with another woman at a table. Like I was willing to share a cheek with someone if I had to, and then figure out a way to, bring up another chair. And Athena's Council is a group of women that does a lot of that, like collaborating and helping women to rise and really targeting, younger women to bring them into our industry and help mentor them. So it's one of my favorite things that I'm a part of. I serve, on a cohort. And so I do a monthly LinkedIn, kind of support group, if you will, of how to effectively use LinkedIn and different stuff. But yeah, that's the short answer for Athena's Council.
No, I mean, I love it. I mean, I've been around for 20 plus years, and I mean, we've got a long way to go, but it is a dramatic difference, at least from, I mean, we love to know your viewpoint, but from where I'm sitting, there's a pretty dramatic difference between what the world looked like 20 years ago versus what I feel like it looks like today from that perspective.
Well,
So,
and I love that you're doing that, Dana, because right here, it's not planned, but girl,
Don't worry.
Dana,
good
what's
choice.
what's the pipeline, or how does if you're a young up and coming star in the industry, like how do they get involved with Athena's council, and like what do they got to do there?
Yeah, they can either go to, they can search Athena's Council in LinkedIn. We also have a website. And so they can get information there. It's scale based too. So, one of the things that we really wanted to advocate for is, listen, there's been a lot of displacement in our industry. And just because you've been displaced and your income is short shouldn't mean that you shouldn't have the same access to some of these resources and collaborations. So it's kind of a pay what you can type of thing, which I love, because I've certainly been a part of other organizations, and specifically women's ones, that didn't have that, right? And a whole lot of pay to play type of stuff. Oh, it's back on.
I know, I've got it.
Well, before you shift over into, well, she has to be here to answer. There you go.
You're going back to the computer? There you are.
There. Okay.
Back
Okay.
again.
Everything just came back up and online. So here I am again. I'm like the Wizard of Oz. I just keep popping in and out.
Chris, what were you going to ask?
It's your twin that you talked about.
That's it.
So before we take over this thing with the fun AI nerd stuff, can you talk a little bit about the book that you just recently co-authored? And then, first of all, like, how did you even get to that before you get a call from Kyle Draper? Or I'm guessing that relationship's existed for a while. And then tell me about that journey.
So you can see my t-shirt, ask me about financial literacy for teens. I literally walk around my community wearing this t-shirt, and I wear it to conferences and all kinds of fun stuff. It goes with the white book. And thank you guys for asking about this, because this, besides the ranch, this is probably one of the things that I'm the most passionate about, advancing women, and then really the financial literacy. And so this has been kind of this heart project of mine since my girls were younger. I have two really spectacular humans that I had a part in raising. And when they were younger, I've been in mortgage their whole lives, right? And so when my cell phone would ring, it'd be like, it's the money phone, because that's how we made money, right? And so we were always just talking about, money and finances at the dinner table. And it was just a natural part of the dialogue we had. But then they'd have friends that would come over, and they'd have these looks on their faces like, dude, we have no idea what you're talking about, right? Like,
Mm.
right? We don't have these conversations at my house. And so it just kept kind of being this thing in my heart was like, I got stuff to talk about and share. And I just think that you should never go into at least college or past high school without understanding what a checking account is, how you can go down a very slippery slope when getting a credit card, like all of these basic things that we kind of understand now at the age that I am. It's just not taught. There's been 18 states that have now mandated financial literacy for at least a half to a 1 unit, meaning a half a semester or a semester, in order to graduate high school, which I think is phenomenal. But it's only 18 out of our states. Like, why isn't everybody on board with this? Texas just passed it in their last legislation. So that's really where the thought came from. And then LinkedIn did its magic, and I saw a post from Brooke Lapidus, and she had just published a children's book called Financial Literacy Fun A to Z, I think is the name of it. And I had been thinking about this project. So I pinged her and I said, hey, would you be interested in, potentially like taking it up a notch for teens? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, I got this guy, Kyle Draper. I've done, had some collaboration on LinkedIn. You want me to run it by him? And she was yes, and he was yes. And we knew we wanted to publish it in April, which is Financial Literacy Month. We started this conversation like in December.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, had to move. And then the other piece that was super important to me is every contributor in this book, besides Brooke and I, are all women. 13 other amazing women that all bring something different to the table, from, real estate, mortgage, investing. And so they all did a chapter. Each chapter has a QR code. So, if you're not a kid or an adult interested in reading, right, you can scan a code and still get a lot of really cool information into it. So that was really the catalyst of how it came about and how quickly it came about. And I will tell you guys, besides my kids, it's probably the thing that I'm the most proud of, honestly, in my career, like is doing it. And our hope is that school districts potentially pick it up as a text because it can read exactly through a semester of work effort. So now I'm working on a workbook that would be a collaborative partner with it. So
I love
Question
it. That's great.
to the broader group, but like when you guys were in high school or growing up, like what was your guys? Did they talk about finances in school at all back then, or was that just something again you just have to figure out?
I was
Go
one of the
ahead.
guys that got cursed and was working at a mortgage company. I was 16, so I figured out what you do and don't do really early. Meanwhile, my friends were like, yeah, dude, I'm saving money. I'm never going to get a credit card. I can't wait to buy my house. And I was like, well, I mean, Dave Ramsey might agree with you some things, but I think you should maybe get that $500 credit card. But yeah, that was my experience. But I didn't have it in school. Andrew, Dana?
I mean, my father was a CPA, so that should answer the question. So it was talked about quite a bit in my house, and with my kids, I started really early. So both of my kids have Robinhood accounts. Both of them invest. The 12-year-old is probably more active. He comes to me all the time with stuff that he wants to invest in.
You didn't check the options box, did you? Andrew's going to get the $400 notice, $400,000 notice.
No. They can't do their own trading. I don't like, but they we log in and they can see what they're doing, and so they've got everything from individual stocks to ETFs to crypto. So it's been a pretty good blend. But I find that that is, again, especially my 12-year-old, is he listens to like podcasts, and he pays attention to companies, and he'll come to me, and we have this agreement that he has to come to me with a thesis if he wants to invest in an individual stock. Otherwise, the money's going into an ETF. And he comes down with these, like, it's amazing to watch what kids will do, because he'll come down and he like studied, like a 2-year cycle on Nike's stock price. And he figured out that there are certain months that it consistently like will dive, and other months where it'll pop. And so he's like coming up with like this short buy friggin' philosophy or theory around Nike, and I was like, all right, bud, let's give it a shot. So
I love it.
Smart kid.
So pivoting away from that. Oh no, never mind. Mace, what do you got?
Should we just go ahead and do Jake's question right now since we're talking?
Yeah, that's fine. Let's do it. So Jake Vermillion was on the show last week. We always ask each guest to ask a question for the next guest, and his question was, what's the number one myth that your generation, aka our generation, has passed on to the next generation
regarding financial literacy?
Oh yeah.
Literacy, then everybody gets approved. That's the myth. Or nothing bad can happen. That's definitely the myth. Wow, I'm gonna kick Vermillion in the kneecap when I see him next. That's a tough one. So I'm just 1 year over the line. This is going to be telling to everybody on this call, from boomer to the gen. Yeah. I'm 58. I'm closer to 60 than I am. Yeah. So there's just that one line there for me. Not that whatever.
We want you on Team Gen X. You're really more of a Gen X.
I totally identify with Team Gen X. I'm a little sassy.
You're not a boomer.
I'm kind of part of the, sign me up for the I don't care club. Like, these are all the things that I don't care that you have an opinion about.
Yeah, exactly.
Just use a different chart.
So myth. Well, I mean, listen, I think there are a lot of myths that are passed, generationally to generation. I had the amazing fortune of having a grandfather who lived to 103 years old. Like, can you imagine what he saw in a span of 100 years, right? And so in conversations, especially with him, later in life, we would talk about things like, what do you think about my cell phone, Poppy? And he, he'd have some, smart aleck answer about, those types of things. But I think from an ultimate myth perspective is that we as a generation think that the next generations coming up behind us are lazy entitled. That's a myth, right? I think that there's probably some, dialogue that, people throw out there because they want ratings or likes or engagements or whatever the hell they want on social media. I find that as far from the truth. All of the people that I have in my circle or that I collaborate with are absolutely connected to doing great things with and for the next generation. So don't buy into that BS that we think that you're a bunch of lazy losers. It's not true.
So there's really funny. I wish I could find this. There was a guy who did a LinkedIn post, and he had photographs of all the newspaper articles and online, like from going back into like the 1700s or something, or like 18. I forget exactly, but it was like way back, right? And it was literally, he just kept repeating every generation, these kids these days don't want to work. Like, this was going back like all the way to like 1854 or something, right? And it was like, this is what we do, right? It's like, we always say, it's like, for me, it was, I remember like, these video games, they're going to rot their brain. They're terrible kids. And now we talk about phones and social media. It's always something, right? Yeah. It's like, we don't, as we get a little bit older, we have this, we don't want to see our way die. And so we struggle with that new way. So it's a great myth.
Well, I think the mediums are different too. Like, if you go to a co-working space, like even in Salt Lake, I'm like, the hustle and bustle and the vibe is like, I'm like energized. Like, and I'm like, I can't believe I stayed here till 10 o'clock at night, and I go to leave and I'm like, there's a lot of people here. Like,
yeah. Yeah, exactly. The other one that I was thinking of, just to add on here, was, and we've got a men's group called the Iron Tribe, and we actually just talked about this recently, was I always heard growing up, like, you have to do better than your parents. And I think for a lot of people that got tied around finances, and it created this sometimes unrealistic belief of, my worth is making more money than my parents sort of situation, and tying too much self-worth around your finances is another one that I'd love to see break for sure. I have that conversation as well with my kids all the time.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that one up and that you are having the conversations with the kids, because it's one of the things that I say to my girls, right? Like, I'd rather you be a really awesome human being versus being a rich human being. Right?
Yes, agree. 100%.
I think another idea for a follow-up book might be like the psychology around all of this, which is, like 4 of us, we probably have, maybe generally we might align on like tactical side of, you should invest in a 401k or ETFs or whatever, right? Those logically, those make sense, right? But then like there might be like emotional and like psychological reasons why we may not do that, or we may choose to we project a different story on money, which ultimately is a utility, and how those stories kind of play out, and maybe like unraveling unhelpful stories or preconceived notions that we have about money, so that we can be more successful with it too. So yeah. I mean, there's some like more like psychology, kind of like therapy related stuff around all that. I think is
makes leave it to the younger generation to want to put all the feel good stuff around it. PK.
Okay,
no, listen, so, I agree with you 100%. 100%.
So shifting from there, I want to jump into AI, and we kind of talked about this briefly before we started this call, but I really want to talk about it in terms of small and mid-sized lenders, right? I think the unfortunate thing that we keep seeing is we see the Rockets, the UWMs, the rates of the world, and everybody like freaks out and thinks like, oh, I'm so far behind, or I don't have rocket money, so I can't do AI, right? I'm not, I don't have Jason Bressler and 1,600 engineers or whatever it is that he has. So I can't do AI, right? And I think also part of the issue, sorry, selfish plug, I'm going to be talking about build versus buy for small mid-sized lenders at the AI Summit for Housing Wire. But it's an important conversation because I think a lot of people think they have to build, or worse, they just don't know where to get started with even, what to buy, right? From that perspective. And I know you just wrote a great post about, a lender who just said, okay, let's do this one thing. And I think if I remember, they saved like 90 grand from the one thing, right?
Yeah, exactly right. And we had to figure out what that one thing was for that particular lender. I mean, I don't often have lenders come to me and know exactly what their pain is. They think they know what their pain is. And so sometimes we have to spend a little time and really kind of digging in to understand really where the pain is and where that first thing might move the needle for them. And that can be different for everybody, right? It could be a cost savings, which is a phenomenal way to move the needle, especially in this market. It can be from a revenue generating, also a great needle mover, right? Or, just from an overall employee satisfaction needle. I cannot emphasize that enough, right? I have conversations all the time where the satisfaction of the employees prior to starting something is low, right? Because the leadership is either engaged or not bought in, or there's a disconnect in the communication. And then once we kind of bring this full circle, what they see from their internal satisfaction. And listen, if your employees aren't your very first customer thought, hear me, you are doing it wrong. You are doing it wrong, because your employees are going to be reflective out into the community with the customers. And so if they're not highly satisfied with what you guys are doing internally as a lender, guess what? They're probably not going to be communicating externally how highly satisfied they are, right? So those are three pieces to me that I think are instrumental.
I think, we were talking about it the other week was, I think the first thing is sort of like know thyself, right? Like understand who you are. I think also, and we talked about this last week on the show, AI is such an interesting technological, moment, right? Where, when you look back at like personal computers or the internet, or things of that nature, you didn't have 100% participation from humanity, right? This AI is so different, at least from where I'm sitting, of how it's captured everyone's attention. And so everyone wants to have input. So I'm glad that you bring that up. And I mean, I would recommend to small and mid-sized business lenders, like create an AI committee within your organization, but make sure it's on all levels. Make sure you've got LOs on that team. Make sure there's processors, there's underwriters, there's like you as an executive, no offense to executives out there, but like you're not in the trenches.
Right.
Like newsflash, you don't really know what goes on that like in totality day to day.
Yeah, the majority of them, I agree with you, especially when you're talking about, jumping from that mid-size, to the larger lenders, right? So, smaller to mid-sized guys are a little bit more nimble. And I think, most of the leadership is kind of embedded and down into the weeds of things.
Okay.
But with that being said, they still get stuck in their own cement boots of things, right? And so
Right.
Even though their role is to your point, Andrew, look out in totality across the organization, there's bias at that level. And so to your point, having all of the collective in your organization being a part of something to solve for, and it may be a solve for only one department, but having all of the other groups visually understanding not how it impacts that group, but then also how they connect to it. Man, you have to have that. You have to. I won't take a consulting engagement from a customer that is not willing to move an engagement forward in that capacity.
Yeah, it makes and ultimately at the end of the day, you need to have user acceptance, right? And AI is like the ultimate of things where you have to have user acceptance, because right now a lot of the ways that it's deployed, if your people are like, no, I don't want anything to do with this. I'm looking at you, LOs, but also underwriters. Now you voiced your money, right? Now you're no longer seeing the ROI necessarily that you had hoped to get in the first place.
Yeah, 100%. And, to your point, right, people usually react to something that they don't know in a couple of different ways, but usually it's fear, right? Like that's the first thing that comes up with them. When you said underwriters, it makes me giggle a little bit, because I think back to the 90s when, AUS was rolling out. Right. And every underwriter I know was like, oh my gosh, we're not going to have a job ever again. And here we are 30 years later. And who's the second highest paid person in the mortgage transaction? Underwriters.
Yeah. But you are right. I mean, the first job I ever had in this industry was an underwriter.
Yeah,
on the secondary market side, albeit not on the originations. But I remember every time any new technology got introduced, it was immediate pushback. But I think, there's good ways to ask the questions. Jeremy Potter has this question he asks that's it's like, what is the one thing that keeps you from doing your job? Or what is the one, repetitive task that, you want to offload, right? Like I would even push saying like, in some instances, get that feedback of like, and I'm not saying you're going to act on all of it, right? But like, at least hear from the LOs and the underwriters and LOAs and everybody, what would you like to see?
Yeah.
What can I take off your plate?
When I was at Goldman, we had this thing where every morning we started the day off, the first like 15 to 30 minutes, was kind of like this huddle. We call it was like a team huddle, but basically we would brainstorm and come up with ideas. Everybody has to pitch in an idea of one little thing we can improve, and then we'd kind of like essentially break down the idea, figure out whether or not it was good, and then whoever brought up the idea ends up leading it. And then every single day there was like these little micro improvements and like continuous improvement that was happening. I think that was one of the things I took away from my experience there. It was like a really sharp and well executed. I don't know if it's a culture or like program that was there for sure.
So
I think
Dana,
they subscribe to the scaling up, like the rows of. We did that at Civic too, and I was actually just looking up at my bookshelf. Scaling Up is a book, and that huddles and that whole philosophy kind of came up out of that book, and it's so awesome. To really kind of create a culture that is always looking for ways to not just make their own individual jobs, better or easier, but that are invested in the other people working side by side to them as well. Yeah.
No.
It's good stuff, PK.
So what are some interesting ways that you've kind of seen? Again, I think, and I'd be interested to hear like on both sides, like, are you seeing small to mid-sized lenders do any building on the AI front? And if so, what does that kind of look like? Mm-hmm. And then also talking about the buy side and what you're kind of seeing, that they're going out and they're buying. But if we can start first, if you're seeing folks build, I know, sometimes that's a big undertaking, right? You got to build something, you got to manage it, you have the maintenance on it over time. And a lot of folks just don't have the infrastructure to pull that off. But what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, on the small to mid-sized guys, I'm not seeing any build happening right now. Like, even the thought to go out and try to, grab the expertise that it would take to build is overwhelming enough conversation for them to go, nope, I don't think so. That's not for me.
Right.
And because I'm such an advocate that it's probably not one solution that you're going to embed, right? You're going to have a multitude of vendors, right? We were all, most of us, I think, were at the Housing Wire, the gathering, right? And one of the things that was up there when, Rocket and Cooper and Redfin were all sitting up there, and Vern said this, is, they have 16 or 18 different vendors as part of their process with AI.
Right.
And listen, I love Jason Bressler. I think he is phenomenal. And what they've built from a tech is outrageously impressive. But you can't build everything, right? You have got to look outside of yourself at some point and be willing enough to go, oh, that they're doing something cool over there, right? Now, you might acquire them if you're a Bressler and be able to pull it in and say you're building it. But at the end of the day, I think, really looking outside, from vendors is where I'm seeing all of my small to mid-sized guys, going.
Well, and I think it's important to note that Rocket, and I always say this, like Rocket and UWM, like they build a lot, but they also hire Google and OpenAI. So like, don't think that like they're not like they're buying services from people to come in and help them with that, or Mace Innovations.
And that's cool, right? Like, I think mixed innovations is the way to make things happen. But for the small to mid-sized guys, right, like just the brain power and resources that it takes to even try to step in to build, when there are so many fantastic buy opportunities that can move the needle for these guys, right? My post was really specific about pick one thing, right? And what that pain point is. Maybe it's on the front of your cycle and maybe it's on the back. I mean, my favorite wins recently have actually been on the back. And I'll give you an example. No human being wants to call another human being to collect a payment. Now, I say no. Maybe there's a weirdo out there that wants to call and say, you owe me money.
I don't want to meet that person.
Yeah, I don't either, right? So I would say 99.9% of the time, us as humans having to make a call to say, you owe me money. I want my money. Give me my $2. It's one of my favorite lines from a movie. If anybody say what that movie.
I got you. John Cusack. Come on.
then so from that aspect of it, right, like the build is, or pardon me, the buy is the way to go, because you can solve one problem at a time and be really impactful. So to the point of a collections person, right, you can have, let's say you're a lender that has, I don't know, $500 million under assets, which would make you on the larger side, right? But you have a portfolio of thousands of loans that are being collected on every single month. An AI agent can make 1,000 calls simultaneously. Like there's just no outperforming a human to an AI agent for those types of tasks. And oh, by the way, when someone starts swearing at them, or other things that can be said on a call, they have no bias. They don't get their feelings hurt. They're not taking a smoke break. Like literally, I can remember one of my very first jobs. I did a collections, and I did it for 2 weeks, because at the end of every day, I was either in tears or so pissed off that I'm like, there is no way I can continue doing like this type of work. So for an AI agent to be developed now that can substitute that, and not only not have the biases, not only be able to make 10x, the inroads that a single human can be made, but now you get to take those humans that were doing those types of things and start developing them and start doing other cool things. And now they're in a new learning model. And oh, guess what happens to your internal expectations or your satisfaction with your team? It goes way up, because they're like, oh, my company cares enough about me to kind of take this horrible thing that I don't want to do and give me opportunity to do something else. So in my opinion, you guys, I don't think AI is dehumanizing. What I do see is that AI is going to replace humans not using AI.
Well, and I mean, I'll say from our end, every company we worked with, none of them have laid anybody off.
Yeah,
they've all repurposed all of those individuals.
Every single one of my engagements too.
Or they were individuals who, like, their response times were, at 15 minutes, and now they're at 2 minutes, right? Where it's like either they've increased their customer service, but generally speaking, again, it takes stuff away. So
real quick on the build versus buy thing. I think the other thing you're like maybe like out of context is like you compare like the Jason Bresslers, the Rockets of the world. They didn't invest in technology yesterday. It's 5-10 years, maybe even longer, right? So it's like the fruits that they're bearing today. Those are seeds that they planted long time ago. And it's like you can't just plant a seed tomorrow and expect it to like produce like a tree full of fruits. And so it's like I think time horizon matters as well. Dana, and this is more of your world, but on the commercial lending side, we've seen commercial lenders who come to us, separately, and then they're like, hey, can you guys build us this portal? And we're like, well, what's the situation, right? They're like, oh, well, we spent 6 months to a year, maybe a little bit longer, thinking that we'll want to build our own technology and build our own portal, differentiate ourselves from the rest of the commercial lenders that are out there. And what they end up doing is spending all that time managing engineers, project managing, building a product. All of these are separate skill sets that they have no experience in, thinking they can just like throw money at the problem and like do it themselves. And then ultimately what ends up happening is they lose out on all the money they could have made if they had just stuck to their bread and butter, quote unquote, manual process or whatever, or if they had just bought like a piece of software. Like if they had just stayed where their skills are, where they're competent in their skill set, like they would have made more money, at least in the short term. And maybe they could have used those revenue from that to maybe fund a product manager or project manager, et cetera, and a dev team to actually go and build a product in-house. But they like typically they didn't do that. Like they would, like the CEO or like the COO would say, I'm going to stop originating, or I'm going to stop, running my day-to-day business, and I'm going to go build tech. And that I've never seen that work out. And we've had so many commercial lenders come to us, and we look at the platform. They'll give us a demo of what they built, and typically it's impressive. But they get 50% of the way there, and they're like, okay, I give up. And I'm like, okay, well, like you did the easy part. Now the hard part comes when it's like the nuanced, detail-oriented part, and like that's where you really need to get into the weeds. And I think that's when they're like, okay, this is not worth the effort.
Yeah.
Well, I want to jump in here real quick to plug Mace. Because I think it's important for folks to kind of understand this is there's that when we talk about build versus buy, when I talk about build, I'm talking exactly what PK is, right? Like, you're a mortgage operation, not a technology company. Don't think that you're going to be able to manage an offshore group of developers from Vietnam or India and write user stories. Most people don't even know what a user story is. I know what they are, and I suck at them so bad. You're just not going to be able to do that. That being said, if you can't find the buy thing in the space, right? Like, there are good groups that are coming out that handle call center stuff, underwriting, LOA assistant, knowledge agents, guideline agents. We're seeing a lot of these things, but you may have come up with, hey, this is the thing I want to do. I want to automate appraisal QC across my company, and nobody has that out there. It's people like Mace that you go to who already understand the industry, who've been an originator, and now have a technology company that can partner with you to build and maintain the thing that you want. So there are kind of multiple avenues that you've got there.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
Well, go ahead, Jana. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, I think it's a really good point. I'd love for Mace to kind of expound on exactly what that looks like. Yeah.
Well, and it sucks because I think there's a lot of people. This is almost like the people are taking advantage. There's a lot of grifting going on in this kind of environment right now.
Oh, for sure.
And there's a very, very large corporation that has a very, very large project, and there's a lot of members that are listening to this. And I even told her, like, look, I can't help you with this project, but I will be the person that I'll be your free CTO and help you vet some of these guys, just as a like, hey, just to kind of make sure they get the jump start. But I do think, like, there are the things that are actually built in house, like, to be done. It is that the amount of things to be able to be built in house it's unbelievable, right? Like 3 years ago, like, if someone were to be like, hi, mate, like, I'm the CEO of XYZ Mortgage. We do about 800 loans a month. And this guy told me to build my own CRM. I'd be like, that guy doesn't like you. Like, if he wants you to fail, like, that's it. Those are the two options. Now, I mean, Andrew, we've talked, I've replaced two, where it's like, okay, what do you use in your CRM? I use this, this, and this, right? And so we've replaced those three things, and then they have a solution that they pay like $500 a month instead of $50,000 a quarter. So I do think, there's a lot of possibilities for savings in the SaaS world, and you've heard me rant, and just like tired of hearing it. So it's okay. But I think there's a lot of SaaS companies that don't know they're dead yet.
Oh yeah, CRMs are CRMs are. My niece just went to go work for HubSpot, and I'm like, hey, you might want to start looking. I'm joking. It's not like you're going away overnight. So, Dana, when I look at the small mid-sized lenders out there, and I think about like where they're coming from and what they're great at, and now they're stepping into this world, right? It used to be a lot easier. I need a CRM, I need an LOS, I need a POS, right? Like, okay, here's 3 vendors, I go look at it, right? Now with the AI world, it's a little bit, or it's different. It's a little bit more intimidating. So there's 2 things I would tell everybody that you should be looking for. Number one, you should be looking when you're talking about a off-the-shelf product, you should be looking at free POCs. If AI companies aren't doing a free POC, I would get a little bit skeptical. Now, that being said, I'm talking about something that's like fairly off the shelf, right? Like our product, I can set up a POC in less than 24 hours, right? Mm-hmm. So it's very easy for me. It's cost effective. There might be some bigger customers that, like, you're probably not going to get a free POC maybe on underwriting. I'm not sure. The second thing I would tell people is make sure that you're either dealing with a company where a person there who's been in the industry for a long time, like Mace, or make sure that you're hiring a consultant like yourself, or we'll plug Suha on here as well.
Melissa
You're my
Langsdale. There's a lot of us.
You're my two favorite. You're the first two that come to mind. So, and I think it's really important, right? Because people like you and Suha, all you're doing is spending huge amounts of your time evaluating different tools that are out there. And as a mortgage executive, you probably don't have a ton of spare time to all of a sudden be learning AI. Okay, so with that being said, what are some additional things that you would recommend to people that they be aware they need to be doing through the process?
Yeah, I mean, I love that you said it's I'll paraphrase it, but stick to what you know, right? Like if you're an originating shop, stay originating, man. Don't get off on this rabbit hole of thinking, oh, I'm gonna create an efficiency in my process. Cool, bring someone else in that helps you while you're continuing to originate loans. And I had an engagement last summer with a mid-sized lender, and they got so down deep into the weeds that they forgot who they were, and their production faltered in a really big way. And it took a lot to get them back on track, which became a whole different consulting engagement, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Which good for me, but not so great for them. So yeah, listen, know who you are is absolutely who it is. Know who you want to continue to be is probably my second point that I go with, because
that's an excellent point.
Right? If you're totally okay with staying where you are and you don't have aspirations of moving into a next level or scaling or or whatever that thing could be for someone, then you may not need the same thing as someone else who is evolving into something else. So know who you want to be, know who you're trying to be, and then probably, and most important is, if you have not already identified in your shop, one, what your cost to produce is. I can tell you in the last 3 weeks, I've had conversations with 8 different lenders, and only one of them could answer that question when I first asked it.
I told you, PK. I told you, PK. PK one day was asking me, Dana, he's like, there's no way that many lenders don't know what their cost to produce is. It's like, yes, they do. He's like, don't they have CFOs? I'm like, yeah, they do.
but Jake brought this up last week. Like, I would take it a step further, which is like, know your P&L on your LOs on an individual level, right? And really understand, because we know, and LOs tend to drive, a lot of technology decisions within organizations, right? Like, I've been preaching that, like, if you're building AI, you might want to be paying attention to LOs and what LOs want, because they drive the industry. But are they making you money?
But here's the thing with that. There you go. Ding, ding, ding. Right. Production does not mean profitable.
Right. Exactly.
And we say in this industry all the time, production outruns anything. It doesn't outrun profitability. It never has outrun profitability.
So as I'm operating as like a fractional CTO for a first time ever, and we have 2 questions. Will it bring more loans? Will it increase profitability? That is the answer to every other question. Should we rent this space? Will it give us more loans? Will it give us more profitability? Should we hire Dana Georgiou? Will it bring us more loans? Will it bring us more? Every decision is that. So it's like, should we go on a President's Club trip to Cancun? Will it bring us more loan? No, we're not going to go this year. We're going to scrap that this year.
That's it.
So I don't know that you could do this or how you would even do it, but it would be awesome if the Scotsman's Guide would do a most profitable originator, and we would have like the most profitable LOs in the country, right? Rather than, because again, we always get volume.
Yeah,
right.
Like, you have to get that self-reported data that we all know is so accurate.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Oh, well, sure. What are we gonna do? Okay, so we've only got a little bit more time. This is Dana. We're gonna have you come back, because there's too much to cover here in an hour. GPT always has a ridiculous question. I really like this one. If you could train a Texas Longhorn to do one completely unexpected thing, like deliver closing docs or hit a 3-pointer, What would you ask it to do and why?
So I'm looking over my shoulder because I have this ginormous 8-foot window that my husband built, and it looks over the front of my ranch, right? And so I can see my 3,000-pound longhorn bull out there, just kind of loping through. And I named him Buttercup because with a name like Buttercup, you can't be mean, like, right? Yeah, my husband was like, that sounds logical. Sure, whatever. Also, he said, if you name it, you won't eat it. That's a lie. I eat everything. I don't care. With the exception of him, because he makes a lot of babies.
After he dies, she adds Reese's in front.
Something that Buttercup could do. We're in a super, super rural area. So if Buttercup could be a door dasher, like he would be $1 billion bull. $1 billion bull.
Do we see another company coming from you?
I mean, listen, I'm always one that's looking for, that next idea, that next fun thing. And if it's not fun, I don't want to do it. I'm too old for that anymore. Right. Like just to, if we can't laugh and have fun and at the same time, be good humans, do something impactful, then I don't want to be a part of it. So everything that I look at and do comes from that lens. But, listen, you never know what you're going to get with me. I think it's the red hair. I don't know.
Okay. So next week, our guest is Karthik Kumar, who is the chief operating officer over at LendArch, which actually has some really impressive AI engineers and are sort of working on the next generation of LOS. Tammy Richards from Kind, who heads up retail at Kind Lending, she's actually the CEO of LendArch, and so. What is one question you would like to hear him answer next week on the show?
What are you going to do to celebrate when you knock the king in Compass, ICE Technologies, off the throne?
Wow, that's a great question, actually. I really, really like that.
Okay, I want to throw in my question. Tell me a bit about yourself and why are you a masochist? Building an LOS.
No kidding. That's oof.
So is there one question, Dana, that we should have asked you today that we didn't about AI and lenders?
Just why isn't everyone at least just doing some type of outreach, right? Like you just get over the hurdle, get past the fear. There's no dumb questions. I'll answer any question. I might not know the answer, but I've got great resources like you guys on the call that I'll tap in or bring someone else in, to be able to do that. But just get past yourself with it, right? Like it is okay to be uncomfortable with something. That's where your best growth is going to come from, in my opinion. So I would just love for the fear to go away in conversations about AI.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think also for people like you can start off small. Like you don't need nothing against, like there's great AI underwriting tools out there. And I'm not dissing on any of them, but like that's a big undertaking, right? Like getting something like that integrated in. And so maybe that's not the place you start, right? Maybe you start somewhere a little bit easier for your organization.
And I just want to add one point.
People are, always talking about, everybody's on all these social media platforms. And so they're always getting like questions through DMs or otherwise. Deploy an agent that can answer them for you instead of having a human having to try to look at every single question coming in off of your platform. It will cost you less than $1,500 a month, and they will be a resource that will produce revenue.
I know a guy who has that built.
I know a guy too.
The funny thing is like whenever you're considering building, so Andrew, you just hit on something when I tell people about when you're building a house or building a product, right? So if I go build an AI underwriting engine that I need to sell, I've got to integrate to all sorts of different companies. I've got to cater to all sorts of different companies. I got 500 to 1,000 companies I want to target, and they all do things. Dana, you know this. We do things differently at this mortgage company, and so you're building something this big. But when you're like, hey, it's just like a CRM, I want it to connect to my one point of sale, my one LOS, and do these 4 features. It's like, oh, well, that's not as big as an undertaking as, like an LOS. So which, 48 doc, not 40, but 4 doc providers, 3 compliance engines, every credit provider. So anyway, that's the thing about considering building inside.
I was on the phone with Jake this morning. I wanted to get his insights on something, and it was so hilarious because I was like, well, what do you think about this for LOs? And he goes, I don't know. He goes, what originator are you talking about? I was like, oh, never mind. So, Dana, thank you so much. I really appreciate you giving us your time and giving everybody out there your expertise. And like I said, we're definitely going to have to bring you back for round 2.
Thank you guys so much. This has been so much fun, and I'll look forward to the next time. But yeah, appreciate you having me here.
And thanks to everybody who's watching this live or the recording. And like we mentioned, next week we will have, excuse me, Karthik Kumar from Lendarch. Bye.